Dear Chairman, dear colleagues and friends in the room, dear colleagues who are passionate about improving the quality of diabetes care, it's a great honor for me to speak here today. And I would like to address how the prevention of diabetes is becoming one of the challenges, but one of the hot topics also for the International Diabetes Federation. I'm Peter Schwarz. I'm Professor for Prevention and Care of Diabetes, and I'm the president of the International Diabetes Federation. And as I mentioned already, the prevention of type 2 diabetes, this is where my heart is beating for. This is where I would say we need prevention, and afterwards we need prevention and then prevention again. And therefore, it's a great honor today at the Egyptian Society of the Metabolic Syndrome to talk about preventive strategy and how the International Diabetes Federation will address this and how we, over the next 2 years and over the next decade, we will address the need of people having diabetes risk in conjunction with the need of people living with diabetes together. About myself, I already mentioned I'm president of the International Diabetes Federation, and Egypt is one of the very active partner in IDF. So thank you very much to you for your passion, for your commitment, for your energy, for your action to improve quality of diabetes care. But how is the reality we are addressing today? And you may have heard that at World Diabetes Day, WHO released data that there's a fast growing number of people living with diabetes. 800 million was in 22, and today it's something about 830 to 840 million people living with diabetes on Earth. There is a scientific discussion, is this number right or wrong? What is the basis? And especially in conjunction with the newest data released at the World Diabetes Congress last week, about the Diabetes Atlas talking about 568, or I apologize, 589 million people living with diabetes. I would say it does not matter. Both analyses are right because they use different criteria to diagnose diabetes, and both show that there is a very steep increase in the number of people living with diabetes, and we have to address this. We cannot accept that there are more and more and more people living with diabetes, but we have to act to do something to reduce the number. The challenge is most of them are living in low and very low income countries, and a lot of the evidence is coming from the Western world, and this is changing now, but we have to make sure that this evidence gets targeting those people living in low and very low income countries and those environments which are totally different than in other parts of the world. And the new International Diabetes Federation guideline having a level of basic care and optimal care at two, based on the same evidence, two recommendations in level of care is the right approach to go ahead and is the right way to address this. The current situation is a challenge. And you might find QR codes here, and these are QR codes you can scan, and you will come to social media channels, which I am doing as president of IDF to invite you to participate in projects, to invite you for the fellowship programs or the new modules in the IDF School of Diabetes, but also inform you about the activities of IDF. So you are warmly invited to join this channel. You can use your smartphone now to scan this, and the code will come again and again. If you're thinking about the health determinants, yeah, you might look at this slide and say, okay, here the red part, this is the increase in number of people living with diabetes in the next decade. It is not. It's a conjunction of increase in diabetes prevalence and air pollution. So there's a new determinant coming up, increasing the prevalence and incidence of diabetes. So if you stand behind a diesel car and you take deep breaths, you find medium-sized particles out of the diesel engine 2 weeks later in your beta cell. So this is, because there is a disaster, but it's a new determinant of diabetes we have to address. As I've started, prevention, prevention, prevention. These are two numbers for prevention. If we would walk 10,000 steps every day from the age of 22, we would not contract any chronic disease. This is cool. Yeah? If you have diabetes and you're only walking 1,000 steps more than you normally do, so 1,000 steps is 600 meters. This is not a lot. If you go out of the room and the building where you are just now sitting and you're coming back, you might have already the 1,000 steps. And as a diabetes person, 1,000 steps more per day lowers the postprandial blood sugar by 1.5 millimole. This is twice as much as 1,000 milligram metformin are doing. So physical activity is beating metformin and all of our other anti-diabetic drugs. Unfortunately, this is the number of steps the average European is walking per day. I'm not sure whether it's in Egypt different, but we are a lazy species. We are built to walk 36 to 39,000 steps a day. This is where our muscles, our tendons, our bones are made for. We are not using the potential of physical activity anymore. And if I ask the question the other way around, how many hours per day we are physically inactive, and everyone might think now what the answer could be. This is the answer. For the 2,700 steps per day, we need 20 minutes. So we are a very, very, very lazy species. And changing this will change our perspective of health, will change our risk of contracting chronic diseases. So we could say the true diabetology is not in our brain as diabetologists or in our prescription, it's in the muscle of our patients if we would be able to activate this muscle, if we would be able to activate our own muscle. We are not always a good example for our patients. But forget about it, physiology and pathophysiology is important for us. Here you see CGM 1,400 measurements a day, a young woman, high A1C, and the green arrows mean she's always eating something, typical snack eater. And the purple line is glucose. And what are we seeing? There is nothing. Yeah. This is an example how CGM told us that the pathophysiology of diabetes is different than we believed. We thought if you eat carbs, glucose is raising, and then insulin secretion brings glucose down again. But we investigated far too many sick people or diabetes individuals. We forgot to look for normal individuals. And here you see in a normal, very insulin sensitive person, this person needs less than 1% of the insulin the pancreas can produce to regulate glucose. You have a flat glucose curve. Now, her father, it's truly her father. He actually has a better A1C, and you see a totally different curve. The difference from the father to the daughter is the father is very insulin resistant. The father needs about 80% of the insulin to regulate blood sugar. And this makes this fluctuation of glucose. This might be breakfast, there's an up and down here, and then up and down for lunch here, then it's going down. There was no physical activity, no treatment. So this fluctuation becomes a very interesting indicator. And I think the future indicator of cardiovascular morbidity and mortality, and not only cardiovascular, also many other facets, if we would be able to analyze this data more and more and using AI for this analysis, will be a breakthrough in generating new knowledge about diabetes care. The problem is we don't find them. Sensors are still too expensive. But in 3 to 5 years from now, I'm very sure we will have sensors for less than $1. And this will change our view on diagnosing and performing diabetes care. But what do we learn also in terms of prevention of diabetes? Especially in terms of prevention, because the fluctuation of glucose is a driver for morbidity and mortality. Reducing this fluctuation, reducing the amplitude of fluctuation will have a health benefit. And this is the same as applicable for someone for prevention. So using, I know that it might not be possible in the moment in your environment, but using glucose sensors for biofeedback in a healthy or pre-diabetic individual is extremely beneficial because suddenly you get a feedback if you are eating carbs. And this helps the individuals, I would say more than 90% adhere to this and change lifestyle. And fully intermittent use of a sensor in a pre-diabetic individual or in healthy individuals totally fine. Some of them do it once for 2 weeks, and this is a trigger enough to change lifestyle later on. But let's go deeper into it. Here you see the development of diabetes, blue, the development of insulin resistance, and green, the visceral obesity. This, until years ago, this was the main driver for developing diabetes risk. And today, we also have the fat in the liver. Fat in the liver and fat in the pancreas goes hand in hand. And in my eyes, these are the most relevant determinants of developing diabetes mellitus. And if we talk about the visceral fat, the visceral fat secreting more than 800 peptide hormones and increasing cardiovascular and diabetes risk, and the hepatic fat, where already 100 gram of fat in your liver, it's a handful of fat, makes you becoming a non-responder to physical activity. This interplay between both, because you need physical activity, as I said at the beginning, to reduce visceral fat. But if you have accumulation of hepatic fat, you block this, and then you start going into a devil's circle. And at the end, there's a very fast development of type 2 diabetes. The problem is here diabetes starts and here we diagnose diabetes. So if you think about treatment, we come far too late to really have an impact on the physiological level. We have to think how to prevent the diabetes at this clinical pathophysiological paradigm much earlier, where liver fat goes up, where insulin resistance goes up, where visceral obesity goes up. This should be the point where we tackle our clients, I would say, because they are not patients yet. So the interplay between visceral and hepatic fat is the driver. And Taylor has shown if you have fat in the liver and then you also have it in the pancreas, this destroys beta cell function. If you remove it from the liver, then also from the pancreas, and this might restore beta cell function. So this can lead to a remission of diabetes by abolishing the fat in the liver and in the pancreas. And now the question, how can we get the fat away from the liver? And the answer is fasting. If you fast for 2 weeks without eating any kilocalories, water diet or water fast, then you might totally abolish the fat in the liver. And I would say this is the fastest gain of health we can generate for ourselves, for our patients, for healthy individual, pre-diabetic, diabetic individual. And this might restore beta cell function and lead to a remission of diabetes. So fasting for diabetes remission will be one of the targets for the International Diabetes Federation to develop a guideline over the next time. But we have to understand where it's coming from. Normally, I would ask you who likes to drink Coca-Cola and then who likes to drink Diet Coke. And here you see 380,000 patient years on the slides. And it shows if you drink one soft drink a day, what it does with your diabetes risk. If you drink water, it's healthy. If you drink industrialized soft drinks, it's 40% like a regular Coke is doing. But Diet Coke or Coke Zero makes 60% increase of diabetes risk per year. One single Diet Coke a day. Many of us drink more. And how can we explain this? The answer are artificial sweetener, and they change the microbiome in the gut. So by consuming artificial sweeteners, soft drinks, because you use them because you think it's healthy, within days you change your microbiome. There are 14 different germs invading our gut. They help us to digest. They help us to for bowel function. But finally, this bacteria, as their stool, they produce fatty acids bond to glucose, and they are very strong fixed bond. And it's basically the stool of this bacteria. It's in our gut. We accumulate this. The body cannot break it down, and by this, it's getting stored in the liver. Interestingly, these are the same bonds you can generate if you fry carbs at a temperature of above 130 degrees. So if you fry carbs, like fries or anything, at more than 130-degree oil, you build the same bonds, which is coming from the bacteria, but the consequence of eating the fried carbs is the same. It's also this molecules also getting stored in the liver and make MAFLD and NAFLD and NASH and MASH and speed up the development of diabetes. And here the additional effect of the metabolites getting stored in the liver is you become a non-responder to physical activity, and this is a disaster. How to address this? One option would be smart health, digitalization. Here you see how our agents lower A1C, how digital tools are lowering A1C, how young digital tools are doing this. And if you ask me what is a young digital tools, these are smartphone-based apps. And now you might say, how can a smartphone-based app lower A1C? It's not a drug. My answer is we are in the pocket of our patients. We never have been so close to our patient than being in the pocket. Every one of us is taking 1,850 decisions a day. 450 are related to our lifestyle. And now imagine that in the right moment, with the right motivational strategy and the right content, we set impulses to influence this, not only 10 out of the 450 decisions, but over the period of 1 year, this might be translated to 10 kilogram of weight reduction and clearly would be prevention of the development of diabetes. So modern diabetology or prevention might look like this. We should not fear this. And there are good examples here in Germany of apps doing diabetes education and preventive education. Other apps using AI you make photos of your meal, and you're not getting blamed for what you are eating just now, but the information is used to help you to improve your next meal. Other apps using the sensors and do nutritional counseling of the patient based on the curve of the sensor reading. Or here a Swedish development, again using a sensor and a swarm of 1,000 patients using sensors and tracking their lifestyle. And every patient is compared to this swarm. And this app has 6 areas of recommendation, not only for prevention, also for diabetes care, and makes clear recommendation. Today at 6:35, you should inject 22 units of long-acting insulin. Then it's tracked, and all this information is used to improve the recommendation for the patient. So using AI for analyzing data on the smartphone of the patient could be a brilliant future for prevention and improved care in the future. Let me come back to the fasting. We know that eating less is healthy. And maybe will be a little bit disruptive. Maybe eating nothing is even more healthy, at least for 2 weeks. And I think a water diet for 2 weeks is a way to lose a lot of body weight. You may gain a little bit by fluid retention later on, but you have a reset of your microbiome and you abolish the liver fat. And these are the 2 main outcomes of this style of fasting. And here you see an AGP, ambulatory glucose profile, of a diabetes patient after the fasting. And you see a flat curve, the bold curve you see here, as you have seen for this lady at the beginning of the lecture. And a picture of MRI spectroscopy. And this is before fasting. The cloudy stuff in the liver is liver fat, and here is it after fasting. And I think this explains very well how fasting can become a new strategy for diabetes care and prevention. And I initiated a working group, fasting and type 2 diabetes, and they presented a lot of information at the World Diabetes Congress last week in Bangkok. And here is the kind of recommendation. It's a proposal in the moment for the guideline where 19 different styles of fasting will be assessed for the water diet I was proposing. And this could be a clinical outcome of the water diet for diabetes prevention. I mentioned it already, the group Fasting and Diabetes, led by Daniela Koppelt and Mohammed Hassanein, very well known, I think, to you, coming from Egypt. And there are 19 different styles of fasting which will be assessed in the guideline of the International Diabetes Federation. There's another group also coming with the leadership from Egypt, Prevention of Obesity and Diabetes in Adolescents, led by Ina Shaltut. They actually have already finished their work with a strong prevention program which can be used for public health strategy in many countries. And here is the publication which was just released. There's also another development, a working group on type 5 diabetes, and this group started working in January in Vellore in India. And this group will develop a guideline to assess the reasons, the risk factors, the way of diagnosing and preventing and treating type 5 diabetes, a form of diabetes which in the past was related to malnutrition-related diabetes. But this is changing a lot, and this group will describe the pathophysiology. And as I mentioned, also the digitalization AI, Amit Dey will lead a working group of the International Diabetes Federation addressing the artificial intelligence, how to use it for diabetes care and diabetes prevention. So a lot will come out in the next 2 years from the International Diabetes Federation. And I thank you a lot for being part of this. And we could ask why IDF? We need a powerful voice for us as healthcare professionals, but even more important for patients living with diabetes worldwide. And I truly believe that every person with diabetes worldwide has the same right to get the same appropriate education, treatment, prevention, and accessibility and availability of the same quality of preventive and diabetes care. we have not fulfilled this task yet. There are millions of people who are misdiagnosed, millions of people with diabetes who are not diagnosed or not getting the appropriate treatment because it's too expensive or not available, not accessible. And this is what we have to change in all the countries worldwide. And I have three goals. And one goal is I want to be in the brain of every politician, I want to be in the pocket of every patient, and I want to be in the heart of every healthcare professional. And how to reach this? We will develop a global diabetes index, and every one of you listening to this is invited to participate. If you scan this QR code, you will get the invitation. And the index will be a questionnaire we ask once a year, more than 100,000 healthcare professionals and patients in every country in the world, translate this into an index, and give the data totally free 4 weeks ahead of World Diabetes Day back to all the stakeholders who want to use it, and to motivate politicians to see, oh, my neighboring country scores a bit better in diabetes care. Now we have to do something. Or they ignore it, but next year we do it again. And then he might see, oh, the neighbor improved and we are not improving. So people might ask him, why have you not acted last year already? Secondly, being in the pocket of the patient, I think you know what I mean, using smartphone and smart health to reach the pocket of the patient with a freely accessible, free of cost educational program from the International Diabetes Federation. So education on demand of the patient who otherwise might not have access to a healthcare service, but might have a smartphone. I know we will not reach everyone, but many, many more than we are reaching today. And so using digitalization in the pocket could be a game changer for people living with diabetes. And finally, this is relevant to any one of you. The heart of every healthcare professionals. I invite you to become fellow of the International Diabetes Federation. Yes, this costs a little bit per year to be a fellow, but in return, you get all the evidence-based education from the IDF School of Diabetes back. And I invite you also to become a teacher of the IDF School of Diabetes. Send me an email if you are interested in this and become a fellow of IDF, because this will build a global community of those who are passionate to improve the quality of diabetes care. So look at the faces of people living with diabetes worldwide, and the activities of IDF in terms of diabetes prevention and improved care should put a smile on these faces. I ask you for your commitment and your energy and passion. I ask you for your action to help to improve the quality of diabetes care at the 75th years anniversary of the International Diabetes Federation. Follow these channels. You will find a lot of new information and invitation for participation in these activities for you. The main one is this WhatsApp channel. Scan this code and use it for your own development, but also to be committed to activities of the International Diabetes Federation worldwide. Finally, let's work together with all our ideas, our intuition, our commitment and passion to help our patients to walk away from diabetes. Thank you very much. Shukran. Dankeschön for your attention.